Hey everyone, welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. Brian and I have each grown physical therapy businesses to 2 million plus in annual revenue. We're looking to get good advice to PTs trying to grow their practices. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and with me as always is Dr. Brian Wolf, and together we are Physio Growth. So today we are going to be talking about AI. Everybody always talks about AI, and we probably got a robot on the thumbnail. But basically, we had a conversation, and Brian has had some stuff where he's trying to optimize in his $2 million a year 5-clinic company. He's trying to optimize how to save time, and he's come up with he's seen a very interesting use of AI that can bring in money today. And we're going to compare that a little bit with some of the other AI stuff that's been out there. I'm sure if you spent any time on social media as a business owner, you probably got about 4 different people hitting you up for, remote therapeutic monitoring AI, all that stuff. So we're going to go through and talk today about what you can do as a business owner to look at AI and actually use it as a tool to help you, as opposed to just spend a bunch of money on a service that isn't as useful. So with that, we are Physio Growth. Physio Growth is a mastermind group. Like I said in the intro, Brian has he has 5 clinics doing $2 million a year. Started that out of the back of his car. And my background is that I am very good at taking clinics that are big ish and making them even bigger, right? Scaling people and scaling up businesses so that it's a really successful sell. So if you want to start a business, you're thinking about starting a business, or hell, if you're at a point where you're like, you know what, I want to get out of this and I want to make it look as profitable to investors as possible, Physio Growth is a mentorship for you. Look it up, www.physio-growth.com. Brian, tell us about this thing, man.
Well, I think the crux of what I wanted to talk about with this, and I think that we've talked about on other podcasts in the past, is I think there's a lot of people out there promoting AI and trying to reinvent the wheel, right? I think what they're trying to do is say, hey, what I want to do is teach you like remote therapeutic monitoring, like what you talked about. And the reason a lot of times I think if people have listened to this podcast, why they hear me roll my eyes at that kind of process is, if you've seen what works and what doesn't work in business in general, the reality is increasing the amount of customers that you can have coming through the door and optimize those systems. That is where AI can be incredibly pivotal within this space, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to Owen about this new AI system, and maybe I'll figure out how to get them on and pitch their services. But essentially what they do is they have AI systems that help with follow-up and calling potential leads, past patients, past clients, and try and rebook them in for your services, which is amazing, right? So if you think about the idea behind something that sounds real, somebody that sounds real and doing something.
It's freaky real, by the way.
Yes, it's freaky real.
Brian played me one of the things, and it was, you kind of knew it was a bot, but really it was comfortable.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it, is it's a bot, but it's comfortable, right? And so the reality of it is one of the things about AI that's going to happen is the more that we teach it, the better it will get. So what it does is going to take that human element out of what happens to a lot of people. Whereas I teach them how to call and do something and lead nurture, but there's people that are rude to them. They don't want to do it. It's boring work. It's arduous. So what ends up happening is they fall off. So you train somebody, they're at their best in the beginning, and then they fall off, and now you're managing that person, that headache, right? Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, and you're also giving stuff to people that they don't want to do. So this is where to pay for services like this and to optimize your schedule, the better it's going to be, right?
Well, this is something at Big Box PT when I was working there, they would actually say, look, here, just an old-fashioned contact form. Somebody fills it out on their website, and they would have to go through the people management process of everybody in the clinic gets the email and everybody is expected to respond to it. So you have PTs who are like, why am I doing marketing? You have front office people who are busy. And then you have another person who's saying, well, did they respond to it? You get an email in an hour or, in a day saying, have you responded to it from somebody higher up the chain? So like, think of all that people management that has to happen to get that speed to lead, which is really important for getting butts in the seats, right? Getting new patients through the door or new clients. And, AI produces a tool that basically doesn't really have any difference to somebody who's just asking follow-up questions and making it so that someone like Brian can come in if they have more questions, or maybe they just sign up with this guy.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So when we think about that process, right? Imagine someone's, oh, I'm busy, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I can't do that, right? So this is an easy thing that falls by the wayside, right? And then they don't get it done. So
Hmm.
ultimately, this type of thing, it's done only when it's convenient for that person.
Yep.
Ultimately, imagine if the AI it'll always be convenient for that person. It'll never not be convenient, right? That's
Yep.
amazing. And so they'll always do that process, not complain. Here's the other kicker: AI doesn't need a lunch break. It doesn't need to work only 40 hours a week. It doesn't take vacations. It
Hmm.
doesn't worry about weekends. It'll call at 1 a.m, right? Remember that phone call I sent you was at 1 a.m. So the reality is the speed at which it works and the efficiency of which it works is at its heightened abilities,
Hmm.
which is crazy. So when you think about that process and what these things can do for businesses and building comparatively, what I would actually say is something like this would replace front desk. It's like you don't
Well, or
necessarily need front desk altogether.
or even it would free up that one front desk person to
Yes.
do the more human centric things that are needed. Hi,
Yes.
how are you today, Mrs. Jones? When they walk through the door, make sure that they, all the stuff that people, because people want real, right?
Yeah.
And that way, instead of, them getting tied up in the back room making a call or having to make these calls with somebody staring at them, they can do other stuff, right? So
Yeah.
it can replace their tasks, but you can use the same person because nobody wants to fire somebody if you like them, right?
Yeah.
For actual tasks that they're kind of tailored for, right? So that's the cool thing. And Brian, I think the interesting part about this tech and just even the way this conversation is going, because we set this up in the hook with like, you know, remote therapeutic monitoring. That's the biggest thing on social media. And I think that as a PT business owner, specifically physical therapy, but this could be for anybody, you have to look at the 5 year. You look at the technology, right? And AI specifically, everyone knows AI is going to make stuff more efficient. We've heard about it. We've read a newspaper in the last 2 years, right? But the biggest question for a business owner is this actually going to solve my problem? Right.
Yeah.
And is this actually going to get me more revenue for my effort, right? So you can look at something like this and the technology is great and you can say, look, I'm willing to take a chance on that, right?
Yeah.
But I think the bigger question is think 3 years down the road. What am I going to put my AI dollar into? Remote therapeutic monitoring or being able to get to more leads quicker, right?
Yeah.
And if you think 3 years down the road, getting to more leads quicker 100 years ago, that was important. And 100
Exactly.
years from now, that's
Exactly.
going to be important, right?
Exactly.
Let me tell you what's going to happen when Medicare figures out remote therapeutic monitoring is all done by computers. It's going to be another $2 ultrasound code. It
Exactly.
is going you're doing all this stuff to optimize and change and paying and all that, and really all somebody at CMS needs to do is just say, it's $15 now.
And that's how
It's
I
$10
set
now,
this. That's
right?
why
Whereas if you get more
yeah.
customers, you can charge them. Like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, this is exactly how I set this up with Owen, right? I set this up with, I think one of the things that I get jaded about and the idea of what I think super important is the basics of getting customers, setting up quality businesses, making sure that there's an efficient process for bringing in money, cash flow, making sure that you're working on lifetime value, again, all these things matter over and over and will trump remote therapeutic monitoring. This
Yep.
is just another, I don't want to call it a gimmick. I don't want to call my shot and say, because for all I know, maybe there's companies that build that all they do is this, right? I actually think the way that I could see this really becoming big is somebody saying, I'll do it for your clinic and I'll do it as
Yep.
a separate job from home. I
You
could
talking
see
about
that
remote
working.
therapeutic monitor?
Exactly. But
Yeah,
realize it's important for those guys who, when you're having a business, for instance, like when you're doing a business and you're growing, if you're trying to add something to your business that's not the main focus of what you're trying to do to grow and scale in the process of what you want to do, in theory, it's only deviating you away from your goal. That's the
yeah.
problem with this.
Well, the number one problem for entrepreneurs is prioritization, right?
Yes.
And the number one goal that they should be hitting, because I don't know how many like multi-million dollar listeners we have, but I bet probably most of our listeners are doing under 1 million in revenue. they'll look at this stuff and optimize and tinker and how's a way I can get this right. But they won't look at the big hairy problem of I need more people in the door, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I think the thing that really hit home when you said it was like, look, some of the ways that they say this is like if you aren't using a tech system or anything like that, and this is again to say if you have a busy clinic, you're already fully established, and this remote therapeutic monitor comes up, and that's an extra code you can get. By all means, right? It helps people who aren't compliant. It might help them be more compliant. Like, find a way to do that. Find a solution, right? But if you're sitting there and you only have a few bucks and you want to do AI and you think that that's going to optimize your practice that's struggling to get people into the door, or you don't know if you can afford you got to be focusing on the actual problem, and the
And
actual problem is that
and
getting more people.
think about this, Owen. And I say this to all of those like people who think about individual who's got the better chance, right? So say the client is looking for physical therapy and I'm utilizing this service and they're looking for physical therapy and they can't get a hold of me and they can't get a hold of you and I'm using this service and I have
Yeah,
AI calling them back, talking with them and getting them on my schedule to book, who's
yeah,
going to dust who,
yeah.
right? At the end of the day, I'm going to get 10 out of the 10 next clients that happens with. So the
Hmm.
reality is that is far more money than what even doesn't even sound sexy to me, which is the remote therapeutic monitoring for again $20 per month, $40 per month for a unit, $50 versus I'm going to get the next 10 paying clients. That's $10,000.
Hmm.
So the difference on that front of some of these systems, that's what we need to focus on is how do I get more, how do I make my schedule more efficient? How do I grow? How do I bring on more employees if that's where you want to go? Right? How do I make this more seamless so I can spend more time with my family? That's where AI could be really, really, really effective for sure. It's going
Well,
to take care of the menial, mundane tasks at such a freaking efficient rate that you're
mhm.
going to be like, oh my God, like this opens up my world for that.
Well, and every business owner, I mean, some people listening to this may have already done this, right? Where they've tried an AI system and it was in the early days of it, and it really didn't solve the problem. It just kind of made it a little bit smoother, a little bit more efficient. I will say people have been burned by this AI thing, and AI is everything now, and it's really not. It's not even like a large language model. It's just, something that is runs a little bit faster and they slap AI on it.
Yeah.
This stuff will start coming, right? Like there will be things that you'll look at and say, "Oh my god, like that could definitely do it." Now, to be fair, Brian hasn't tried this. He has not had a
Yep.
year of this. He hasn't had customer feedback of I don't like talking to a robot, right?
Yeah.
So the hope is that maybe Brian's got the first of the best generation, right? And he got lucky. So don't be afraid to try things, especially if you have the money. But man, if you don't have the money, which a lot of people don't, um, prioritize what's most important to your business, and that's almost always getting more people to know that you exist, to come into your door, and to be fast to a lead.
And what I would say in this scenario, when you think about this, right, is it's a lot of money to start with, right? And to your point, the biggest thing to think about in your business is what is holding back your growth. What is the
Yeah.
bottleneck in your current business? What is holding back? And then think about what's the solution for this. For me, it's worth the investment in something like this because I know how big of the bottleneck it is. And so
Hmm.
as you get bigger in your business, you're willing to take more swings and be
Hmm.
like, okay, like, is this going to mess my business up or is it going to improve and actually make my business better? And in this case, if this works the way I think it will, it'll be a game changer for our entire business and growth, right?
Yeah.
And it'll fix a complete bottleneck that we've been dealing with for a year plus now. And so if that's the case, all of a sudden this thing is 10x to me what ultimately I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah.
For people who are like, well, lead nurture is not really my problem, getting new patients to the door is not my problem, that's a whole nother scenario. But for
Hmm.
most people, it is. So I think when it comes to that stuff, because again, maybe if you're listening to this podcast and you're $10 million in business, you're like, I don't need more clients. But I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
Most people want to keep getting bigger, which means you want to see more clients, which means you want to optimize. And that's what this stuff can do.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. That's the sort of stuff we talk about when we have these Q&A sessions with our physio growth. We have weekly Q&A sessions where Brian and I will sit and talk. And because we've done this from Brian out of the back of his car all the way to me being part of a 8-figure sale. We've seen this stuff. We've seen what happens at different points of the business life cycle. So if you have questions like this, we'll say, yeah, you're talking about AI, but really your issue is prioritization. What's your bottleneck? What's this? So just looking at reframing, if you're a business owner, or even if you're someone who's just trying to figure out where do I start, check out www.physio-growth.com. It'll have all the information on there on our weekly Q&A calls, different modules, things like that to help you kind of grow and build what you want.
Yep, love it.
All right, man. So with that, we are out. We finally kept it down to under 16 minutes today.
Good.
Look at us.
Good. Nice and efficient today.
There you go. Good. Get it into that morning commute.
That's right.
See ya.
See ya.